hold on, let's go, hold on. Okay, hello, welcome to the Go Grab That Day podcast. Coming to you live from New Zealand, but not live, but recorded. Hope everybody's well. Hope you're all keeping safe, sane, clean. Yeah, COVID free. Let's not talk about that. But yeah, it's been 2 weeks I think since I last did one of these. Feels like it's been about 6 months, but yeah, no fights last week, so I've a few things to catch up on. I've been dying to talk about, but I said I'd save it for today. Obviously we have a fight card to get through as well, but before that, some housekeeping notes, I think that's what they call it. Please keep liking, sharing, subscribing, the same thing I say all the time. I know it's annoying, but I have to keep saying it. Need those numbers to get pumped up as high as I can. Then the more I can do this and hopefully get better guests on and stuff like that. But yeah, I appreciate the feedback and all the subscriptions and stuff so far, but please let's keep sharing the page, getting it out there. The more the better. The more guests I can get on, the more fun I can have doing this. I always say this, but I do have a lot of fun plans coming up in the future. I just can't talk about them yet. Things I'm working on that will hopefully come to fruition. But let's see. But yeah, most importantly, subscriptions and likes and subscribes and yeah, same thing. But you know what I mean. Please. But I do appreciate the feedback I've been getting from some of the videos lately and stuff like that. So thanks, guys, and I hope you keep sticking with me. I'm getting better, I swear. But yeah, we got fights. We got fights to talk about. Somewhat small fight card, but still a few to break down. So I have a list of things to get through, but first I'm going to get through the fight card, I suppose. Yeah, we'll do that first. Anyway, so we had Vettori versus Holland, UFC Vegas 23, I think, yeah. And it wasn't, in my opinion, not the most exciting card from top to bottom. There was a few good fights on it, so like I always say, I'm going to skip through the little bits that are kind of boring, because I do have a lot of stuff to talk about. But anyway, from the early prelim, there's only one fight on the early prelim. Why the fuck was this card on at such a weird time? Being in New Zealand, I've grown accustomed to and gotten quite comfortable with having the fights on at a lunchtime-ish here in New Zealand. And today, the fucking prelims started at 3:30 a.m. strangely enough. But my maths is not great, and I don't really care to go and check it out, what the time difference, or why it was like that, or did it have something to do with the time difference, or whatever. But I don't really care. But anyway, yeah, that question just popped into my head, so I don't know why. We'll find out later, I'm sure. But on the early prelims, we had Impa. I know this guy, but I can never pronounce his name. Impa Kasanganay versus Sasha Platnikov. And Impa won via submission round 2. Yeah, not the most exciting fight, but Kasanganay needed a win. I believe he's the guy that got starched against via the back spinning kick, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so anyway. No mind. Moving on to the prelims. As usual, my brain is getting wound up. I'll get there. By the end of the podcast, I should be pretty quick. And to kick off the prelims was William Knight versus Jon Jones. I kind of said that like, I don't know, but anyway, decision via decision. Jon Jones was the winner of that fight, and then kind of a guy I was looking forward to seeing fight was Lewis Saldana versus Jordan Griffin. Saldana winning via decision. Yeah, that one could have gone either way, I think. And then we had Jack Shore versus Hunter Azure. That was a good fight. Yeah, that was an enjoyable fight, am I right? I think, yeah. Yeah, and then we had Jorgen De Castro versus Jarji Stanho. My God, Danaho absolutely obliterated De Castro. with a heavy knockout. Short right hand, but he folded him like a deck chair. He just, one of those ones where he looked like he landed bad on his knee, kind of similar to the Stipe one 2 weeks ago. Hit his head pretty hard on the canvas as well, and then I think Dano landed one last shot as well, but yeah, the Castro was out cold. But hopefully he's okay. But good win for Dano. Yeah, it was a nasty knockout. I believe I tweeted about it that way. Yeah, so check out my Twitter. But yeah, moving along. Sorry, rushing through it a little quick, but I do have a lot of stuff to talk about. So trying to get to the really good fights. Speaking of good fights, Ignacio Bahamondes, who I also spoke about, he was one of the guys who I'd seen on the Contender Series. Good fighter, very tall, long fighter for the lightweight division. He was fighting John McDessie. John McDessie won the fight via decision, but McDessie looked great. He looked like he could have been in trouble because obviously fighting a much longer fighter, and if Bahamondes had used his range, I think he would have. He just didn't seem to use his range too well, and I don't think he liked getting hit too much. Not that anybody does, but he visibly didn't like it. But McDessie looked good. Like, for the shorter fighter, his jab was real nice. But it was a fun fight. This was really fun, but to me, it kind of looked like McDessie was in control for the majority of the fight, and he thoroughly deserved that decision. But that's the problem. Like, when you look, I think McDessie's been fighting in the UFC for must be about 10 years in the UFC. I don't know for sure, but he's a vet anyway. And Bahamondes' I think it's his first official fight in the UFC. Tough guy to go up against. Very tough guy to go up against. But thoroughly enjoyed it. He looked really good. Like I said, the shorter fighter, and still used his lack of range, or he didn't allow the lack of range to affect him. So yeah, that was a fun fight. And then we had Scott Holtzman versus Mateus Gamrot. Gamrot with a pretty vicious TKO in round 2. It was a clean right hand, I believe. And then a bit of ground and pound at the end. But yeah, that was a good finish for Gamrot as well. I believe he's another one of these Polish powerhouses, if I'm not wrong. I think so. And then the main fight of the preliminary card was Jim Miller versus Joe Solecki. This fight, unfortunately, was not the most exciting. Dominic Cruz on the commentary team, he had said that he was hoping to see this fight go to the ground. He thought it would be a great battle over and back, and it did go to the ground, but it wasn't a great battle. It was like whichever guy got position on ground controlled it, but that's all, just literally controlled, didn't really do much with it. I think Jim Miller controlled the first, and then Solecki controlled the second and third. Just unfortunately Solecki was just that bit better. Jim Miller still fighting. He's been around a long time as well. I believe he broke a record today for most fights or something like that. See if I can find it. Basically he's been fighting a long time. And then we get into the fun stuff, into the main card. So, opening the main card was Platinum Mike Perry versus Daniel Rodriguez. What to say about this fight? Yeah, Rodriguez was far better. Mike Perry took some heavy shots. Rodriguez was just better all round. Perry looked good. Maybe Perry looked good in the takedowns at some points, and he controlled little phases of the fight, but just on the feet. Rodriguez was far better landing the heavy shots that only Mike Perry would have taken. Even the sounds of the shots, they were, I believe Daniel Cormier said, they were like banging your fist on the table, and that's what it sounded like. It was just solid, clean left hands he kept landing on him. Looked like Perry broke his nose again, even though his nose is pretty fucked anyway. yeah, it was a bad fight for Mike Perry. I know they had said alright that he has now lined himself up with a new camp and that they will be in his corner for his next fight. I think he needs to change something badly. That's if the UFC are even willing to stick around with him, because one of these guys taking a lot of beatings in his career, and I like Mike Perry. Mike Perry's a lot of fun in his interviews, in his fights, everything. I enjoy watching him, but you don't really enjoy watching these one-sided regular hammerings either, you know. But credit to Rodriguez, he looked really good. I remember, what's that guy's name? One of the guys, Joe. Oh, that's gonna drive me crazy. In his corner, Rodriguez's corner, he has kickboxer Joe Schilling. My apologies. Joe Schilling was in his corner, and at one point he had Perry in trouble. He landed a hard shot, and Joe Schilling, you could hear him shout, not to panic, to take your time, and just keep popping away at him. And that worked throughout the entire fight. Great corner work. Because that worked, he just kept popping, and then he'd land a heavy one, back to popping away, and just the sounds of some of the shots he was landing on Perry. It was the first round, I believe, Mike Perry took him down. Took Rodriguez down and controlled him pretty well. But I don't know, did he get tired, or was it just took too much of a beating then from there on out? He wasn't really in the fight. He was winging shots, trying to take Rodriguez's head off to where Rodriguez was just cleaner, much nicer striking. And really would like to see Mike Perry change something. I know I've said this before, where it was a lot of fun when I didn't think it was a lot of fun, to be honest, but I know people did, where he was having his girlfriend in his corner, and it was all, you know, it was fun to talk about and all that, but I think it's got to change. It's got to change. You need some stability, especially a guy like him. They need stability. Need a good corner team, not just your girlfriend and some. I think the other guy that was with him today, they said, was an up and coming pro fighter, which is better. But I mean, it's Mike Perry. He's been around a long time. He needs some good guys in his corner, a good coaching team. And I can't remember who they said he has signed up with as his team, but he'd done the camp with them, but for some reason they couldn't be in his corner this time around, probably because of COVID or something like that. So hopefully, a bit of work with them, maybe things will improve. But he can't take too many more beatings like today. That's if the UFC are even going to stick around him much longer, I don't know. But he is still a fun guy, sells fights to an extent. But great win for Rodriguez, and definitely shout out to Joe Schilling in his corner. I thought it was really good corner work. Anyone who watches like kickboxing or Muay Thai will know who Joe Schilling is. And they're all working they're all from the cowboy camp, the BMF ranch, the Cowboy Cerrone. So yeah, good fighter to keep an eye out for. And then we had Nina Ansaroff versus Mackenzie Dern. She's still down as Ansaroff here, but she is now Nina Nunes. She's taken Amanda Nunes' name, which was quite cool. She's still Ansaroff on the UFC website for some reason, but anyway. This was a tough fight. I didn't think she was going to win this fight. I think she's been off for about 2 years. 2 years coming back against an informed Mackenzie Dern is a tough fight, and she did okay. Like, obviously this fight finished just towards the end of the first round via armbar, but she looked good. You know, her obviously, which most people would have known anyway. Nunes' striking was going to be better than Mackenzie Dern anyway, but if it went to the ground, it was going to be a different story, and that's exactly the way the fight went. Dern got her down to the ground, and she was Nunes held her own, fighting the armbar, keeping her arm locked and not allowing Mackenzie Dern to get the actual armbar, but it just eventually a patient jiu-jitsu artist like Mackenzie Dern, you cannot hang around with those positions with her, and she got the win. But I'm looking forward to see, like, again, Nunes looked good for as long as the fight lasted, but it's good to see her back. It adds a bit of more fun to that division, I think, because she's a good competitor. I just think it's a tough fight for her to come back against Mackenzie Dern. Is tough for any fighter. Anyway, moving on. But great run from Mackenzie Dern. She's like, that's 3-4 in a row, I think. Her striking is improving under Jason Perillo all the time, and obviously her ground game is outstanding. So she might be one to worry about in the future as well if she keeps improving the way she is. Cleans up her striking a little bit more, I think, but it has definitely improved. So hopefully it keeps going. And then moving on to a gold grab that day, alumni Sam Alvey versus Julian Marquez. And this fight was as fun as we kind of hoped it would be. It didn't last as long as we hoped, but I was kind of hoping to get well, I suppose it went 2 rounds, which is probably surprising to a lot of people. But both guys walking out, I believe Marquez walked out to Miley Cyrus song, and then Sam Alvey walked out to my brain when I think these people's name, Taylor Swift, I think. There's a Taylor Swift song. So that sets it off already. You've got Sam Alvey with a big smiley face shaved into the back of his head. But it was interesting, like, Alvey's game plan is just crazy. He immediately put his back on the cage and just got the hands up ready to go swinging from his hips, which is crazy, but that's what he does. And it works and it doesn't work sometimes, and unfortunately this time it didn't work. He did catch Marquez a couple of times, but he was just swinging a lot wilder than what Marquez was. And eventually Marquez just had him in trouble and got him in a real kind of I suppose it was a guillotine really, yeah. Not a fully locked up guillotine, didn't have his legs on him or anything, but he still managed to choke him up. But Alvey was in big trouble at that stage anyway. In fact, the referee probably could have stopped it a couple of punches before that, but he had him in trouble, and then just as Alvey was hitting up, he locked in the guillotine and he choked him through sleep in round 2, midway through round 2. So it's a good win for Julian Marquez. Had some other kind of a crazy call out afterwards. That was calling out some American footballers. Unfortunately, I don't know who they are. I'm not even sure were they American footballers, but they weren't anyone I knew. Called them out for some, was it a sporting event or something like that? But quite a fun character. He would remind you of someone that comes from the wrestling entertainment world, like WWE or WF or whatever. Sounds just like that, sounds scripted all the time, every time he gives an interview after his fights. But good win for him, and tough one for Sam Alvey getting choked out, but he was in major trouble before he got choked to sleep, and he was getting it finished anyway. And then moving on to best fight of the night, probably, definitely the best fight of the night was Arnold Almighty Allen versus Sadiq Youssef. Yeah, this was a fun fight. Very back and forth. It was a close fight for pretty much all 3 rounds. I think Youssef looked good going towards the end of the fight, because I think Arnold Allen got a bit tired, but Allen had dropped Youssef in the first round, and then in the second round as well, had him in big trouble in the second round with a head kick. But I think that's what kind of tipped the scales for him. That's what gave him the fight. But a fun fight to watch. And both of those guys are a tough outfit at featherweight. Another stacked division, like with more guys on the way up. But that was a fun fight, really enjoyable for all 3 rounds. Probably kind of, don't want to say saved the card, because the card wasn't that bad, but just not the most exciting. And the problem is when you've spent, you've gone a week without any fights, you get pumped up for it, and this is what happens. But great win for Arnold Allen. Very good win and a very, very interesting fight. And then she's on to the main event already. Sorry guys, I skipped through that pretty quick, but I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the main event. Marvin Vettori versus Kevin Holland. What to say about this fight? I spoke previously, obviously Kevin Holland only fought, I think it was 3 weeks ago, wasn't it? 3 or 4 weeks ago. against Derek Brunson, and he got pretty much outclassed and didn't do it with too much dignity, in the sense that he kept talking. I've already kind of had my rant about that, where he kept talking about the fight and everyone knows what I'm talking about. This was kind of his way to, I suppose, show people that he was the real deal, or at least show people that he did give a shit. And he did, to an extent. There was much less talking, still a little bit of talking, but much less talking and much more listening to his corner. But there is, I'm going to seem like a Kevin Holland hater lately, but I just am picking on little things that I see. It's just my opinion on him, so don't shoot me. I think Kevin Holland is quite weak mentally, or immature, whatever way you want to put it, but I think both kind of complement each other, or both mean the same thing really. I noticed, obviously I didn't pick up on this just in his last two fights. I've said it previously that he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I just didn't like his attitude, and in some interviews I don't like his attitude. I'm not sure what to make of it really, but it's almost like he doesn't care, or he kind of runs his own, marches to the beat of his own drum kind of thing. I think he kind of maybe has a little too much of a say in his camp and things like that. Now, I don't know for sure. He's obviously got Travis Lutter as his head coach, and Travis Lutter is a very well experienced guy who fought in the UFC plenty of times. Not a bad coach, great jiu-jitsu guy, great mind for the game. Doesn't always mean it's a good combination. So it doesn't always mean that, as good as Travis Lutter could be as a coach, doesn't always mean he's the right guy for Kevin Holland. And again, the reason that I pick up on these things is it's a number of things that are building up for me. I can't go into every detail, but if you've seen him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I've seen him in some of his interviews with Helwani as well, but in particular on the podcast with Joe Rogan, Travis Lutter is also on the podcast, and I may have said this before, but I can't remember. But it just felt like it was almost like a parent kind of watching every word the child says, something along those lines, if that makes any sense to what I'm saying. Travis Lutter almost kept kind of contradicting what Holland would say, or kind of saying to him, Holland would say one thing and Lutter would say, that's not necessarily how things go in terms of their fight camp, and in terms of his diet, and in terms of a lot of things. So that was just something I picked up on. Obviously, then his performance in the Derek Brunson fight, which drove me insane. I just thought it was so unprofessional, so just at that level, it's not good, basically. Today, then, the things I picked up on were, there was another thing. I don't really want to look into this too much, but I know in some of the build-up, the build-ups to his fights, he's been seen kind of spending money like crazy, and I know people have been talking about that. I don't want to look into that too much, but it's a lot of little things I'm looking at. But today, a lot less talking, seemed to take the fight much more serious, which was good. I started talking a little bit in the first round, I think, but he got caught then with I believe it was an elbow or just a punch while he was on the ground. And when he went back to his corner, he was like shaking his head. He was like, fuck. He was cursing out loud. And I mean, you're always told, as a fighter, I'm not putting myself on the same level as Kevin Holland. I just know I've heard this, and I've heard guys say it, and I've been told this. You never show that you're hurt. You never show your frustration. You never do anything like that. It can happen accidentally. Obviously, if you get hurt in a fight, sometimes it's hard not to show it. But he went back to his corner, shouting loudly, like fuck. He was pissed off because of his eye. I think his eye was pretty swollen. I believe it was his left eye. And yeah, just that alone kind of had me thinking, okay, because usually guys won't do that. They won't ever show that they're pissed off. They won't ever show that another fighter is frustrating them. But anyway, so that was fair enough. Getting back into the fight, and he didn't have an answer for the grappling of Vettori, which that's fair enough. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't have had that answer. But then, I can't remember, was it immediately at the end of the round when he got hit and his eye was swelling, or was it the next round where his eye had swelled a little more? But anyway, again, he was showing his frustration. I may be getting the rounds mixed up, but it all comes to the same point. He was showing his frustration and the eye was pretty swollen and he was kind of blinking, so obviously he couldn't see out of it too well. Again, another thing a lot of fighters don't do, they don't show that because immediately the ref or the doctor is going to come in and have a look at it. And the doctor came in and was looking at his eye and he had asked him, can you see? And he had to ask him like 4 times, 3 or 4 times. Holland kept saying, what? He said, can you see? What? And then he asked him, can you see? And he said, what do you mean? So then Herb Dean pretty much shouted at him, can you see out of that eye? And Kevin Holland said, well, yeah, I can see you. Again, in my opinion, that was him looking for a way out. I think he wanted a way out of that fight. Never see fighters doing that again. You will see them doing it, but a lot of the time it's because they want a way out or they truly cannot see. Now his eye was pretty swollen, but it was not that bad, and he wasn't exactly taking a total ass whooping. He was just more so being controlled, and he was still holding his own on the standing up. But these are just the little things I'd noticed. I think because you always see when a doctor comes in, the fighters are like, no, I'm good, yeah, I see, all good, basically get the fuck out of here. Yeah, and he didn't do that. Yeah, in my opinion, he was kind of looking for a way out. He's looking for the exit door. I could be completely jumping the gun here. That's just, like I said, it's my opinion. I didn't like he was better this week compared to his last fight. And look, at the same time, he's young, he's newish to the sport, to that level, and he did only fight 3 or 4 weeks ago, so that's tough too. But those little things I look at, I don't like. And also, his corner don't seem to do a lot of, I don't know, like in between rounds, in the last fight where he kept talking to Khabib and he wasn't listening to his corner and all that, then this time he wasn't doing any talking, but neither were his corner. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of kind of telling him what to do in terms of the grappling, because he kept getting taken down over and over. And DC, the commentary team had mentioned, his problem is that he was allowing Vettori to get his hands together. So when Vettori was going for the takedown, he was allowing him to get his hands together, which is what was screwing him over. And funny enough, his corner didn't say that. And again, Travis Lutter is a super experienced guy. You should know that. So I have a feeling that Kevin Holland kind of has a little too much control over his camp. I could be wrong. This is just me picking up on these little things. Not good signs, in my opinion. And obviously, look, his eye was bad. It was pretty swollen. But just, again, all these little signs I didn't like. But in terms of just the fight itself, like, Vettori completely won the fight on grappling. But Holland looked good then standing. He was awkward in his typical awkward kind of stance, and he stunned Vettori a couple of times and looked like he could get Vettori in trouble, but just the takedowns were wearing on Holland, and he'd taken a pretty decent, I don't want to say a beating, but he roughed him up a little bit. It wasn't that bad of a, an ass whooping. It was just a controlled fight. Like I always do, I notice immediately online there's idiots, so Vettori boring and this is bullshit, he doesn't deserve a title shot. He won the fight. He went and he beat the guy all 5 rounds pretty much. Yeah, all 5 rounds beat the guy. What do people want? He had a game plan, he was in there, he beat him. I know listen, I'm not the most, some fights when they're super grapple heavy, they are boring. In my opinion, this was not, because Vettori was doing damage. He wasn't just holding on to him, he wasn't just laying there. He controlled Kevin Holland, he beat him. He took the fight out of him, basically. I don't want to say he beat the piss out of him, because he didn't really, but he was hurting him, controlling him, and frustrating him. Frustrating is a big word. Not, that's my vocabulary, just a big word in terms of explaining how the fight went. But yeah, like, fucking idiots online. Vettori's, lay and pray, and it's control the fight. He beat him up. He controlled the fight, and he suppressed any of Holland's attacks by taking him down. That's how he won the fight. I am also, in the words of George St. Pierre, I'm not impressed by a performance. What a terrible accent I just did there. But I'm not impressed by Holland's stand-up, majorly. I think he's awkward, he's very, he's explosive and he's athletic. But I think when he gets to the patient strikers, I've said this before, but when he gets to patient strikers as he moves further up, if he moves further up that division, he's in trouble, I think. I think the Darren Tills, the Robert Whitakers, obviously the Adesanyas, Paulo Costa, not so much a patient striker, but just a beast. Yeah, I don't think he's going to do too well against any of those guys. I think he needs a lot of work. It's my honest opinion. Again, I'm not trying to shit on Kevin Holland. He's another super fun guy to watch. His fights usually are pretty exciting, but Vettori controlled him, and Vettori looked very good. Didn't look like he looked like he was. I don't want to say he was in trouble on the feet. Just sometimes the awkwardness of Kevin Holland and his hands look fast. Holland's hands did look very fast. I would say that. But Vettori just did very well controlling him. Didn't have any fear being in his guard. Considering Holland is supposed to be a pretty good. He's a BJJ black belt, but supposed to be a pretty good black belt. Vettori didn't seem to have any issues with being in his guard and being on top and stuff like that. So great win for Vettori. I know people want to call it boring, but that's how you win the fights. And he won it doing damage. I mean, what more do people want him to stand up and take a risk of getting knocked out? Fuck that. He tried, and whether he'll get a title shot next, I don't know, because obviously Adesanya has beaten him already, albeit quite a few fights back, but still. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, but yeah, I'm not sold on Kevin Holland at all. It was at one point, I thought he was exciting, and lately I'm not sold on him at all. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I do wonder if I wonder if that camp is maybe no good. I don't know how close he is with Travis Lutter. Like, is there a real bond there, or is it literally just a camp? He seems to be pretty close with Travis Lutter. But I would imagine go to like an AKA or something like that, ATT. AKA in particular would really help his wrestling, his grappling. And then you've got a problem on your hands, especially if he's going to keep talking shit to you. But no, not super impressed. I think there's a lot of work for him to be done. But on the other hand, I am impressed by Marvin Vettori. I think Vettori's striking still needs a little bit of work. He's just, heavy pressure, kind of predictable a little bit, but his cardio, he still is a reasonable striker. His well-rounded game is quite good, so he's going to cause problems for a lot of people, and he does seem to be improving since that last Adesanya, whenever it was. But yeah, improving. Definitely improving, and what a win. People stopped shitting on him. He went out and he was supposed to fight Darren Till. That's another thing people forget, which is I don't want to say a completely different fighter, but it is a much different fighter. Darren Till being a southpaw as well. I think Kevin Holland is just orthodox, I think, but nevertheless a different fighter, and a higher ranked fighter. So he still took this fight, went out, did what he had to do, and he won. So credit to him. Don't know what's going to happen next with him, but yeah, that's all I'd say on Kevin Holland. But yeah, a little frustrating to watch, and you can see the frustration in him too. So there's a lot of work to be done somewhere. I have a feeling maybe he should switch camp, but I could really be jumping the gun there. I don't want to go too into that because I might be just being an asshole. Should be. Anyway, that's the fight card. That's enough of a rant on poor Kevin Holland. But yeah, so very quickly I have a few more things to talk about, but I want to very quickly have a look at next week's fights. So Fight Night, Whittaker versus Gastelum, which that is going to be a fun fight. I'm sure people remember they were supposed to fight the year before last, I believe. No, did I get that wrong? Shit, what did I fuck up there? Yeah, they were due. Yeah, they were due to fight. Yeah, because they coached on the Ultimate Fighter, and they were supposed to fight. I think Whittaker got injured, didn't he? God, I hope I'm not fucking that up. Yeah, no, they were definitely. I think Whittaker got injured last minute. Anyway, come on, brain. So looking at next week, you have. I'll quickly run through the card. Jessica Penne versus Lupi. Lupi Godinez. I don't know who she is. Alexander Romanov versus Juan Espino. I like that fight. That's just the prelims. And on the main card, let's see what have we got. Alex Munoz versus Luis Pena. Al Hassan versus Jacob Malkoun. Chase Sherman versus Andrei Arlovsky. Arlovsky's on his 946th fight. Jeremy Stevens versus Drakkar Klose, good fight. And then the main event, Robert Whittaker versus Gastelum. So not the craziest fight card, but looking forward to that main event. Then, a few things I wanted to get on was one of them being, I know it's a few days ago, or in fact almost a week ago now, but I wanted to say for this was the Jon Jones saga. You know, sad is the right word, but the issue with the UFC, obviously Jones is looking to get paid for the talk of this fight with Ngannou. There's been a lot of tweets over and back where he hasn't been happy, and I just wanted to touch on it very quickly. I know the UFC they haven't announced anything. It's gone over and back to supposedly they were about to announce the Jones and Ngannou fight, and then it was like, no, that I'm going mostly by Ariel Helwani, which is, you know, pretty much one of the best guys to go by. But yeah, supposedly it was being planned, then it fell through, and they were looking at the Black Beast, Derek Lewis versus Ngannou, because Jon Jones is wanting too much money. But yeah, like Jon Jones is a great fighter. There's no doubt about that, and he definitely deserves his money. I would imagine probably not the easiest guy to deal with, considering he has a bad track record with the UFC and stuff like that. But still, I mean, you look at his actual fight record, you look at the numbers he pulls in. Now he doesn't pull in Conor McGregor numbers. Nobody does. So people shouldn't really compare that. But he still does. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but he still pulls in pretty good numbers for the UFC and over a long period of time. You know, I've been doing it since he was young, you know, so the UFC really, really should pay him. But like he had, sorry, I'm just trying to, I don't want to quote him wrong, but some of the tweets, he's put up heaps of tweets, and one of them was that he had a meeting with the lawyer Hunter a few days ago, the UFC lawyer, and as of right now I expressed to him that anywhere around 8 to 10 million would be way too low for a fight of this magnitude. And that's all that has been discussed so far. Now, I know people are looking at numbers, obviously me, like fucking average Joe, the numbers sound huge, but when you think about it, it is probably, whether you want to call it the biggest fight ever, probably not. One of the biggest fights ever, yes. It's up there. And he's stepping up in weight against fucking Ngannou, who's a murderer, you know. You can understand. And it is still Jon Jones, you know, arguably the greatest of all time. So I can understand. Now, in terms of numbers and what other fighters get, I'm not 100% how much more that is. I never really know how the numbers work out, because you hear of the money they get, and then there's bonuses, or there's, you know, they have a lot of fees too with their coaching and their everything they got to pay. But yeah, he basically said that. And I know Derek Lewis had tweeted something like, shit, I'm pretty sure he tweeted, shit, I'll do it for 8 million. So obviously he's happy to do that. Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen. It jumped over and back, but mostly with Jon Jones not being happy. Yeah, next tweet was basically, I'm supposed to be waiting for what they're offered, but I'm hoping it's nowhere near that low. Guess we'll see what happens. And one thing I'm sure of, I've never had more people excited to see a fight than what they are now, which, to be fair, is probably right. And this was one, he said, I've been working my ass off for years. Concussion, surgeries, fighting the toughest competition the UFC had, which is also very true. Like Jon Jones has never had easy fights. It's been big names, big, tough fighters all the time. And yeah, basically said, toughest competition I had to offer throughout my 20s, right around 2 million per fight. I'm just trying to have my payday. Trying to have my payday, the fight that all those fighters believe one day is possible. Whether you're a fan of Jon Jones or not, it is true that he's been fighting tough competition for a long time. Why not give him the payday? This fight is going to bring in millions for the UFC. So much money. It's going to be one, like I said, one of the biggest fights ever. So I don't know. And then his next one, I don't want to keep reading through all his tweets, but the next one was, I tweeted, show me the money, and that evidently pissed off the boss. What a learning lesson. I feel like if Conor would have sent the same tweet, there would have been a whiskey night. Which he's right. Like, Conor can pretty much do, although that's not always true nowadays either though. Because I've said this a few times as well, that a lot has changed in the UFC in the last few years. The way they used to work things was, you know, if you're a big name, they wanted to get you on the card because you brought in the money. It was all down to pay-per-view buys. That's where the UFC made their money. But now that's not the case. Since they've signed with ESPN, I know I definitely have said this before, but since they've signed with ESPN, all the UFC have to do, the deal they have with ESPN is basically to put on so many fight cards per year, and then they get their big chunk of money off ESPN. That doesn't matter if they never book Jon Jones, it doesn't matter if they never book Conor McGregor, as long as they hit this number of fight cards per year, they get their big haul of money. So this pay-per-view thing, and you know, these they leverage that, the guys like McGregor and, you know, Diaz, Nate Diaz in particular, the kind of leverage that they used to have, they don't have anymore. Now, albeit, or nevertheless, the UFC want to still have these big names. You know, you don't want to be just letting these guys go, but at the same time, they still don't have the leverage they used to. So, although Jon Jones is right in what he's saying, it doesn't hold the same weight that it used to. Like McGregor still gets away with a lot more than what other fighters would, and gets paid a lot more than what other fighters would, but not as much as, he doesn't have the same leverage he would have had a few years ago before the ESPN deal. Doesn't mean that Jon Jones is wrong in what he's saying. You know, he does deserve a big payday of this. I truly believe he does. And it's, look, I think out of all, there's a poor number. It's something like 15. I think it's like 15% of all of the UFC's earnings gets paid to fighters. So they are grossly underpaid. But look, that's just the way it is. It's been like that for a long time. But yeah, I'm not one to really speak on that too much because I don't know the numbers exactly. But it would be nice to see them get paid a bit better. And you know, when he says that, I've been working my ass off for years, concussion surgeries, fighting the toughest competition the UFC had throughout my 20s. I mean, it's true. Like, you gotta think, like, he was only 23, I believe, when he fought Shogun Rua for a title fight. You know, and he is only getting older. You know, and eventually, I'm sure Jones is smart enough to know that eventually he is going to have his day. And you don't really want to have an underpaid day against, you don't really want to have your day underpaid against Francis Ngannou. Because, I mean, you're talking, like, I truly believe the kind of power that Ngannou has, that no matter who you are, you take a shot from him, whether it knocks you out or not, it does something. It's long-lasting damage. So at the very least, these fighters should get paid. You know, unfortunately, some of them don't. But yeah, just, and like, he put up another one. He was retweeting what someone wrote. Yeah, he retweeted what some other guy wrote, and he just said above it, I literally met a fighter recently that couldn't remember how old he was. You know, and skipping through a few of them. And he's just talking about how he thinks the fight is going to be huge, and he's building up the fight, rightly so. And he said this fight has the potential to bring in hundreds of thousands of new fans from around the world. I can feel it in my bones how big this could be, and he's right about that too. You're going to get a lot of people that want to see that. But you got to imagine, Ngannou's obviously getting this this new fan base to the UFC. It's a bit like Deontay Wilder, you know, that crazy power. People love that, like the Mike Tyson in his era. So Ngannou is a good thing for the sport, but then a lot of people will know who Jon Jones is. Some people like him, a lot of people hate him. You know, me, I quite like Jon Jones. I'm not a big fan of what he's done outside the UFC, but no doubt about it, he's an amazing fighter and is one of the best to ever do it. So, like the Conor McGregor thing, he's going to be hated or loved. There isn't really an in between for a lot of people. So people are going to tune in to see Jon Jones get knocked the fuck out, or see Ngannou get a proper test. Great fight. I really hope they line that fight up. Me as a fan, but whether they pay Jon Jones the kind of money, I don't know. But he is right in what he's saying, and he's just been tweeting non-stop. He put up another big one here. This was like probably over a week ago. Everyone knows fighters don't make anything close to what they actually bring in when they fight. I really don't see what the big deal is paying your main event for one of the biggest possible fights ever. It's not like I'll be asking for my actual fair share. So I mean, you gotta feel bad for the guy too, because in boxing, Jon Jones would be a multi-billionaire by now, and I don't know what kind of money Jon Jones has. Yeah, like whether or not he has a lot of money, you know, put away from his career, that doesn't matter. Like, let's be honest, he's known for was known, probably still is, being quite a big party person outside of the UFC. But nevertheless, he does deserve a big payday. And I'd like to see Ngannou get a pretty big payday as well. So I don't know, will Ngannou get the same payday as Jon Jones? But you do got to look at the risk. I mean, the risk for Jon Jones, because we know what Ngannou can do. And like, let's say Jon Jones comes up and he looks fantastic. What risks are there for Ngannou? Is Jon Jones going to be powerful enough to knock him out? Don't know. To out-grapple him and to win the fight, of course Jon Jones has the ability to do that. I don't know, has he the ability to knock Ngannou out? Maybe, we don't know that. But the thing is, we do know that Ngannou can knock out Jones. That's for certain. And the risk with Jones stepping up is he's never fought in the UFC at heavyweight. So we don't know how that's going to look. Could look terrible, like the weight may slow him down. It may not work out for him at all. Now I know he's got like some older brothers who play in the NFL, I think, or used to play in the NFL, and they're big boys. So I'm sure he can do it, but that doesn't mean he can go up and still look like the same Jon Jones. And also, you know, in his last few fights, obviously he holds himself in high regard because he's such a good fighter, it's hard to outdo his previous wins and stuff like that, but lately he has looked just a little more human. It's the only way to put it. As he's gotten older, he's looked a little more human, a little more hittable. You don't want to be more hittable against Ngannou. And it's just a lot of questions hanging over Jon Jones stepping up to heavyweight. So of course, why shouldn't he get paid? I would like to see the UFC just make a deal with him. But again, there's a lot of tweets, not over and back, but mostly just it is just Jon Jones not being happy with what's going on, and it's nothing has really come out about it. All we're getting is kind of what we, you know, from like I said, Ariel Helwani and stuff like that, and he's tweeted like pictures of himself training and he fucking looks big, but they haven't made an official decision. I'd imagine there's still a lot of discussions going on behind closed doors. But it did look like they were going to do it, then it looked like they weren't going to do it, and now it's gone kind of quiet on that front again. So hopefully they're going to get a deal done. If I'm honest, that part of me wants to see Derek Lewis get paid as well, but the worry is, you know, you do the Derek Lewis fight, then you run the risk of losing the Johnny Bones and Ngannou fight. So I don't know, but I really want, in terms of money, it'd be nice to see some of these guys get paid a bit better, obviously. I mean, that's been an issue for a long time in the UFC. Um, you know, just the really big names getting paid. But now with this new model, considering they're getting, like the UFC are making their money no matter what, it's all the more reason to pay the fighters. I know they've less leverage, but like the fighters have less leverage. The UFC don't want to allow this because then they know every superstar or every fighter that's getting a name for themselves are going to want this. But just pay the guys, pay, like for these mega fights, start paying the guys. It's hard to argue with anything that Jones has said in his tweets, really. And again, I've said he's probably not the easiest guy in the world to have dealt with, considering all the trouble he brought to the UFC and stuff like that. But still, you're looking at the, you know, there's no other light heavyweight out there better than him. Whether or not there's heavyweights, I don't know. But yeah, so I can understand his point, but anyway, I'm going to get off to Jon Jones because I've spent a long time talking about it. But pay the man. Show me the money. Show him the money. Or show me the money if you want, but I definitely don't have any leverage. Anyway, moving on. We have there's a couple more things I want to talk about. Meisha Tate making her return to the UFC, which I was quite shocked to hear. I did not expect that to happen. Yeah, she is. I was listening to a couple of her interviews. She was on Helwani, and then she was on Brendan Shaw's podcast as well, The Fighter and the Kid. And yeah, she was basically saying that she noticed the hunger come back. Yeah, things like that. It sounds like she's coming back for good reasons. Apparently she has tested herself in training. You know, she went and did some training to see if she still had it, and she was doing well in the gym. I know it's a different story in the gym, but she said she had kind of checked all that out first. She did her, what she called her little checklist before she had contacted the UFC. And then she said she was contacting Dana for quite a while. Excuse me. For quite a while, via Instagram, trying to get him to book her a fight. And yeah, apparently eventually he did just message you saying come home. And now they've booked a fight. She's going to fight Marion Renault, I believe. Which is, let me double check that name. Yeah, Marion Renault, who I think it's going to be her, it's Marion Renault's retirement fight, I believe. But she's a veteran too. It's not an easy fight for Tate. But it's probably a nicer fight than what they could have given her, if that makes sense. You know, I'm glad they're not sending her in there against fucking Nunes straight away. But it's interesting, because that 145 division, you know, Nunes is the 135 and 145 pound champ, and 145 seems to be on its way out because not enough contenders and not enough interest in it, unless the UFC have other plans, maybe to pump some more fighters in there. But it doesn't really make a difference because there's no actual challengers there. So I know Nunes had talked about fighting there, but not Nunes, Meisha Tate had talked about going in there to offer some new life to that division, but apparently she's changed her mind and it's 135 she's going to fight at. They've announced it's against Marion Renault, but I don't think they've added a date just yet. At least I haven't found it. But yeah, I suppose it's good that she's back. It does no harm to that 135 pound division. Add some life to it. It's maybe a possible new contender to fight Nunes. I don't know. Like it'll all depend on how she looks against Marion Renault. You get a nice feel for whether Tate should be back or not. I worry about these returns sometimes because when they spend a long time away, it's not so good, and especially if you're looking to fight an Amanda Nunes caliber type fighter, you know. But nevertheless, it's good to see her back. Meisha Tate is one of the biggest names in women's fighting anyway, so it does no harm. And I'm sure Amanda Nunes would love the fact she's coming back because it gives her a big money fight and a new, even though she beats the shit out of her already, like, but it gives her a new challenge, maybe, you know. Yeah, gives her a new challenge, I suppose. But yeah, the interesting thing I don't want to say interesting because it was quite sad for anyone that Meisha Tate used to be dating one of her coaches and an ex-UFC fighter, Brian Caraway. I believe he fought a bantamweight, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, I believe he fought a bantamweight. Not a terrible fighter. He spent some time on the Ultimate Fighter show too, and he coached her on that show. But I hadn't realised how poorly that relationship had finished, that things were quite bad between them, and Meisha Tate had gotten very depressed throughout some of her fights. The Nunes fight, apparently she'd been super depressed before that fight. So that'll have had some saying in the result of that fight. Not that I think it's going to be, I just think Nunes too good anyway, but nevertheless, it was quite sad to hear that. There's a lot of issues between her and her ex, which I didn't actually know about. I knew they'd ended quite badly, but I didn't know it was that bad. I didn't know things were that poor. She talks about it on some of the other podcasts. I think on The Fighter and the Kid she talks about it, and on the Ariel Helwani podcast. So check that out, because to be honest I can't remember for sure off the top of my head, and I don't want to say things out of turn either, because especially with those kind of things, you don't know who's in the right, who's in the wrong. But yeah, it was quite, I suppose, sad to hear that she was going through all of that shit. But now, suppose she, the last while she's been the vice president, is it? Or she's had some form of a backroom role anyway, in terms of or with one championship in Singapore. But then obviously she has decided to come back with the UFC for another fight. Whether she'll stay with one championship in terms of working in the back room, I don't know. I know she has said that she has to leave them while she fights for the UFC, which is probably something the UFC made her do. That's usually what the kind of thing they do. But yeah, good to see her back. Hopefully she does well in this first fight. Then we get kind of a gauge as to whether she might be a fresh challenge. I say fresh, with Nunes beat her already, but a new, fresher version of herself maybe to fight Nunes at some point. Because in that division, I would imagine Meisha Tate would only have to win one, two, I would say 2 fights at most, if she wins them pretty well, convincingly. If she wins this fight and then gets another pretty good fight, I would imagine she fights Nunes after that then. It's who's really staking their claim to fight Nunes besides maybe the Venezuelan vixen, what's her name? I always forget that girl's name. Pena. I know she's probably next. Don't think she's going to do well against Nunes, so it leaves the door open for Meisha Tate eventually, but it'll be interesting to see. Kind of adds a little more life into that division. There is life in that division, but I mean, a new challenge for Nunes, and obviously the 145 division is probably going to fall by the wayside eventually. But yeah, just wanted to speak on that. And then 2 more things, and I'll let you fuckers go then. So the Ultimate Fighter, which I had spoken about quite a lot, as if you don't know by now, you're not listening to the podcast, but I'm a huge fan of the Ultimate Fighter show. I always have been. I'm one of the rare people who are a big fan of it, because I know most people are shitting on it, they don't like it. But I was super happy to hear it returning this year. I know people are talking about how it's got such low ratings and stuff like that, but I still enjoy the show. I still think it's quite fun. Now they finally announced the coaches, which I am not necessarily disappointed, but I think for the show returning, maybe they should have picked guys with a bit more beef between them. Like they've decided to go with Alex Volkanovski and Brian Ortega. I'm a big fan of both guys. I think they're great characters and stuff like that, and it will be interesting to see. But there's a lot of respect between the two of them, so could possibly make for not the most exciting season, but I am glad to see it coming back. And I suppose the other annoying thing is, because these 2 guys were supposed to fight a month ago, and Volkanovski got COVID, so now, because I think it's at the end of this month they're going to start filming that show, so you're looking at least another probably 3 to 5 months ish, before this fight happens, because they'll have to do the entire show and they'll fight then in the finale. But the show is going to feature middleweights and bantamweights. So yeah, I'm quite glad the show's back and all that, but I just don't know as to whether it's going to convince people that it should be back. You don't need to convince me. Like I said, I love the show, but interesting to see these guys coaching. It will be fun. For me, like I said, it's going to be fun. I'm going to love it, but I don't think too many people are going to be super sold on watching the two guys coach, because there is no banter, there is no bad blood really between them. Doesn't necessarily mean it won't make for fun viewing. Maybe they'll do some different things with the show anyway. They might make some changes to it. Maybe, I know when I spoke to Sam Alvey on the podcast here, he had suggested that maybe they used to have like a challenge. They used to every week have different challenges on the show, not just the fight. They would have like different sporting challenges and stuff like that, athletic challenges, and that might be fun to bring back too. But I suppose they've got to look after the fighters too, so they don't get injured. So I don't know. We'll see. But I am glad it's back. I can't wait to watch it. Don't care who's coaching. Long live tough. But yeah, so that's all I want to say about that. They could have probably picked two better guys to coach, again, in terms of bad blood and stuff, but nevertheless, it's back. I don't care. We back, baby, we back. And then the last thing I want to talk about very quickly was the Venum deal. I didn't get a chance to talk about it on the podcast, so I'm sure enough people watching have heard, the Reebok deal fucking, went up as well as a lead balloon. They showed the fighter because of all the fighter sponsorships being lost and stuff like that. And for people that don't know, in the UFC you used to be able to kind of get sponsors and stuff like that on your shorts and on your fight uniform, and fighters apparently would make heaps of money out of it. If you listen to Brendan Schaub, he talks about it a lot. It's one of the reasons why he fell out with the UFC. That per logo on your shorts and on your walkout t-shirt and stuff like that, or for women maybe on the whatever you call it thing, the bra. Apparently you make a lot of money per logo, and that's where most fighters, if you're not getting paid too well, you would make a lot of money off your sponsorships. But obviously when Reebok came in and wanted all the fighters having their one uniform, fighters did not get paid well at all, unless you're like a Conor McGregor. You were not getting paid well by Reebok. Some fighters were getting pretty much not even worth the money compared to what they would have got if Reebok hadn't come along. But anyway, so not a lot of people were a fan of Reebok. And then the uniforms themselves, like they weren't horrible, but they weren't amazing either. They were just a plain thing. There's nothing really fantastic about them. Plain uniforms, whatever, and they had a bad rep anyway because fighters, giving out about the pay and stuff like that. Anyway, then the UFC had announced they were parting ways with Reebok and they were going with Venum. For me in particular, I was super excited because I like Venum anyway. I've used some Venum gear and I have used some in the past. I have Venum gloves, which I love, and Venum have been involved in fight sports for a long time anyway. A lot of people would use their stuff. And they're in Muay Thai and they're in heaps of combat sports. So obviously super excited, and then they launched the gear. First off, they launched the fighter pay. They did say they were going to pay fighters better, and they are just about better. It's the same thing like if you're a champ or if you're a Conor McGregor type fighter, you get paid pretty well, but the lower guys not so much. Again, the numbers, I was reading them earlier, but I don't know them for sure. Can't remember them for sure. So there's that, and then take all that out. But the uniforms look shit. They look super. It may as well still be Reebok. It's just super plain. Nothing exciting about it. You'd think. I don't know. I'm not happy. I just think they could have made a much better job of doing something fucking different with the shorts and with the walkout, the t-shirts and the hoodies. They're nice. I've noticed their white one is pretty cool with the Venum logo, but that's all it is. It's just a plain white thing, and the champ ones are black and gold, similar to Reebok. I just think they have done fuck all different. Pay the fighters a little bit more. The uniforms are still super plain. I know there's not a whole lot they can do. Like, I'm not talking about go back to the tap out days where everything is fucking shiny and bedazzled. But a little better, like a little, hope, one thing I do hope, maybe they will, in particular for particular fighters who maybe have a good nickname or have a cool reputation about them. Then maybe they'll design some nice t-shirts and stuff like that for them outside of the uniform itself, because that's one thing Reebok didn't do. But I'd like to see them do some pretty cool design t-shirts for particular fighters, and cool hoodies and stuff like that, outside of the fight uniform. Maybe in terms of the uniform, it has to be plain, it can't be anything nice. But yeah, I do hope they just put a bit more effort than what Reebok did. It was all too fucking plain and shit. Like the best UFC t-shirts and fight t-shirts and MMA t-shirts, they're all kind of bootleg stuff. They're the best ones out there, because the actual official UFC ones, besides some of their Fight Island stuff, was kind of nice. But most of it you're better off getting bootleg, because it looks better, it's nicer. Yeah, fuck Venum. They let me down big time. I hope, you know, it's only new, and it is only the fight uniform, so hopefully they're going to design some new stuff. You know, like I said, some kind of fan t-shirts, stuff like that would be cool, hopefully. But other than that, I'm not impressed by her performance. Yeah, so that's all for this week. I apologise, that was a long podcast, but we didn't have anything last week, so I had a lot to catch up on. But I appreciate you listening, guys. Hope you're all doing well, and hope you enjoyed my shit talk today. There was a lot of stuff. I don't even know how long we've gone over, but yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, please subscribe. If you watch this podcast and you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. You know, these are the numbers we need. Please. Yeah, this is not going to cost you anything, you know. It's not going to do anything to your page, it's not going to do anything to you. Just fucking click the subscribe button and get my numbers up there. Please, yeah, I'm begging you. And if you have time, give the video a share, give it a thumbs up, all that kind of thing. The more you share it, the more people see it. And also, yeah, like I've said before, feel free to drop me a message underneath the video, or you know, DM me if you have any suggestions, anything that you'd like me to talk about. I'm open to a lot of ideas. You know, any suggestions at all, hit me up. But please keep showing your support. I appreciate it, guys. And I should have said as well, sorry, check out our affiliates. It's Mystique jerseys. Go onto the website. There's some great gifts for any fans of rugby, football, for you Irish people, GAA, or outside of Ireland, maybe you're a fan of GAA as well. Check out their jerseys. Go to Mystique jerseys and use the promo code GOGRAB that day, all caps, for a percentage off. And also check out PPT Fitness, Fitness and Nutrition. We have the link to one of their programs on the Instagram page, but also there's heaps of others. Check out the actual PPT page online, or check out Peter Holland on Instagram. He's running a new summer, I believe it's a summer fitness program coming up in the next few months. Brilliant guy, brilliant PT, and he'll get you the results you're looking for, so go check him out, or check out the link on the Instagram. Cheers, guys, and I will hopefully have another video up next week, or not hopefully, I will, but please keep like, sharing, subscribing, talking, all that kind of stuff. Exciting things coming, I promise. Just stick with me, please. Appreciate it. Thanks for your support, guys. Take care. Go grab that day.